welcome back to another episode of Let's Analyze This. If it's your first time stopping by, thank you very much. And if you're a returning guest, we love you. Thank you for coming back. Before we go into the show, I just want to take a minute to tell you, if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, please make sure you do. And as we go on, if you enjoy the conversation, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section below. Thank you very much. So today's topic is, who is your responsibility? Can a person be your responsibility? From parents to in-laws to children to, your spouse. Can a person be your personal responsibility? We're going to debate this, but before we get into it, I want to introduce my panel to you. As usual, as always, my co-host Talia on the panel.
Hi.
And today, for the first time on the show, we're having Sakina with us. She is a customer service rep for the London Underground. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Good. And a returning guest today on the show, we have CJ. Say hello, CJ.
Hello. Thank you for having me again.
Good. So now that we've gotten introductions out of the way, I'd like for us to dive right into the topic. So first, before we get into it, I want to start by defining the meaning of responsibility. I think we all know what it means, but I'm still going to state it anyway. So responsibility is the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone. I thought that was quite deep. So before we get just kind of the background of this, of how we chose this topic, Talia and I were having a debate. We're having a conversation about, our children caring for us in old age. And I said, I don't want my children it's not their responsibility. I don't want to be a burden on them. And she disagreed with me. And so we kind of got into, back and forth. I thought, you know what, this would be a good conversation to have. And here we are. So I want to kind of go to Sakina first to say, Sakina, what are your thoughts? The first thing you hear when you hear that somebody is your responsibility, what is the first thing that springs to your mind?
First thing is my children, and that's that.
So your children for you.
Yes, children, because I chose to have them,
Right.
So I believe, I have responsibility over them to a certain age, not forever.
Good stuff. Yeah, I was going to get into that.
When you get to a certain stage. Funny enough, I was having this discussion with someone last week, and because I'm Nigerian, and the Nigerian culture is you have to look after your parents, and they put that fear in you, and I don't really believe in that. I've said several times that, you know what, when my kids grow up, I don't want to be a burden on them. I don't want to be one of those parents that'll be like, oh, you have to look after me, you have to do this, you owe me this. My children does not owe me, because I chose to have them, and I'm responsible. They're my responsibility. However, I don't think I should be their responsibility. If they choose to do something for me in the future, then it should be their choice. And I don't want them to feel guilty for not doing certain things. They should put themselves first and their own family first. And then, if you want to look after mommy, then that's cool.
Mommy won't say no. All right. Thank you, Sakina. Let me go to CJ next. So CJ, what do you think? Do you agree? Slightly disagree, or what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I think it's good that Sakina added at the end of her what she was saying about if they choose to. So it's one thing saying I don't want to be anybody's responsibility. However, if they choose to make you their responsibility,
right,
then are you going to turn it down? You
Of
know,
course.
right,
do you see what I mean? So also sometimes it might not be down to you. Like you
Mm.
could get to a stage where somebody has to look after you,
right,
and you might not just have a say in the matter.
right,
So that's the way I look at it. I think, and when you talk about responsibility, you have a situation where, from a parent's point of view, if you bring kids into the world, they didn't have a choice. So
right.
you do owe them that duty of care. You do have that. You do have to be responsible for them. And in our culture, if you have kids, it's almost expected that after a certain point, they take over. Um, Again, if you've brought your kids up in a certain way, then it's almost expected. You might not even have to say anything about it. You might decide, oh, I'm going to sail off into the sunset and leave them alone, but they could be the ones trying to get hold of you to make sure you're okay. So it's not really a case of you saying, right, I don't want to be anybody's responsibility. And
Okay.
then it's just one more thing. If you again look into the Bible, for example, you know, it says honor your mother and your father. Um, you know, so in some ways, the kids might really be about that life where they know that that's expected of them. I can see Kay bursting to say
Yeah,
something.
I was okay, no worries. So it has biblical backing in why people feel that way. So let me go. I don't know if it's the same for the Quran. Is it is
Yes.
it
Yes.
okay, so it's religious kind of. It has religious backing. So
Mhm.
let me go to Talia next. I know we kind of disagreed slightly on the topic. Let me hear your thoughts.
Well, I think the reason why we disagreed was because I felt at that point that you were kind of the opinion that no, your children didn't have to look after you.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
was saying, well, they don't have to, but I would love my children to look after me. And there is nothing to say. I mean, it's not. Nobody wants to be a burden. You don't even at your a certain age. You know, I'm just thinking. Let's say my daughter is 18 and I'm whatever age I am. You know, I still wouldn't want to be a burden on her by saying, oh, you need to be at home, you need to cook, you need to do the no, no, no. I mean, we have evolved. The world has evolved enough to, you know, for us not to want to tie our kids down, so to say. But I think where we got to a point that day where we would say, where I said to you, what about if you had something like dementia, like CJ just
Mhm.
mentioned, where
Mhm.
you've lost all abilities to then decide if your children look after you or not. Of course, if I'm fit, well, and able, they don't have to do nothing.
Yeah.
But if I'm in that stage where, you know, I'm old, I've got dementia, I kind of need someone to run my estate because I will, then of course I want them to take up that responsibility. I don't listen. I feel like sometimes we let civilization get too much in us that we're like, no, our children have their own life to live and stuff like that. Yes, they do. But when I am in a position where I can't look after myself, I want them to step in and say, I mean, they owe me that much. And yes, they do owe me that much to step in when I can't look after myself anymore to look after me. It's not too much to ask.
Well, okay, let me just kind of I'll share my opinion in this. And luckily, so my parents, my dad agrees. I don't know him nothing. But my mom, she's the queen of sense of entitlement, the typical Nigerian, I want to say typical Nigerian parent. So she's the queen of them. So she feels that way. She thinks I owe her, oh, I struggled, and well, yeah, I know you struggled, but I'm not. Okay, so I have children of my own. I have a family of my own. I'm not going to struggle doing that and then struggle doing yours as well. If before I go too deep into this, I just want to ask: do you feel like people who, Tally, I'm asking you this
Yep.
specifically. Do you feel like people who feel the way that I feel, that feel they don't owe their parents nothing, do you feel like it has something to do with how much their parents have invested in their lives, for example. So
Well,
say, for example, in your case, you know, we know each other a lot, and I know how much you do for your kids. So would you say that it maybe influences how people feel about the situation?
okay, so it's interesting that you brought up that topic, or you've gone this line. Well, for my, I'll speak for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily feel that any of my parent has done a great deal. I mean, as much as I'm doing for my children, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think any of my parent have done the same. So anybody that knows me knows, you know, the relationship that I have with my parents. But that doesn't have a bearing on what I would do for them when they're not able to do for themselves. Do you get
Okay.
what I mean? I just feel like they brought me into this world, you know, regardless. And I think that as a sense of, yeah, I think it would impact for some people. But for me, I don't think it does. I think
But
if
would
my
you,
parents are in a position where they can no longer do certain things for themselves, and I'm in the position where I can help, then I would help. Because I
but do
owe them
you
that much.
think, okay, let me just ask you this. Yeah, you owe them, you feel you owe them that much, but
Mhm.
would you bend over backwards for them? So I'm not saying what is comfortable for you, because I understand that right now maybe £100 or £200 might be comfortable for certain people. So,
I
but
think I
would
would.
you
I
bend? Okay, okay.
I would.
So,
For the fact that they are my parents.
okay,
And
okay.
nobody want, do you know, I work in the health sector, and we cringe as healthcare workers. We cringe each time we see like a elderly lady or elderly man that have come in and they've stated their children as next of kin, but they're sick and none of them are there. We're all like, oh, you know, it's not. I know everybody has their reasons for doing things, and I'm not trying to judge anybody. We all have our reasons for doing things. And I think that for that reason alone, I mean, at the end of the day, how am I going to stand when I'm long gone in front of my maker and said, you know, I've done my bit. I need to do my bit. And I've done my bit for my parents. I want to be able to say, yes, I did my bit for my parents, regardless of whatever relationship we
You
have.
have with them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Talia. What do you have to say, Jason?
I was going to say, but that's that expectation that I was talking about,
Right.
right? What you talk about in the health, what you see in the healthcare industry. Let me put a question to you. How many old people's homes have you heard of in Nigeria?
Not a lot, maybe one.
Exactly. That's my point. So it's that expectation that if you've brought a child into this world, if you've put effort into bringing them up, there's an expectation that when you get to a certain age,
You
they
have
do
to
for you.
But
reciprocate.
do you know what?
Um,
The expectation that you're talking about is not just from Africans, you know.
no, of
When
course
I
not.
say that healthcare workers, we cringe, it's not just the Africans amongst us, it's all of us. And okay, so did you mean that the expectation was from everybody and not just Africans?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
fine. Okay.
And where you've got a situation where that expectation is not met, then people outside the scenario then cringe and think, oh, hang on, why is this person, or why has this person, why haven't they got anybody? Or why are the kids or next of kin not stepping in and helping out, or, or why they're not there for them?
Yeah.
And
But do we,
that's,
sorry,
go
but
ahead.
why is it that it seems that once someone has a child, automatically they expecting stuff. Just bringing a
Yes,
child into the world is not enough.
it's not
You know,
enough.
there's other
No.
things that comes with it. Have you looked
But
after this
can I,
child? Did you provide all their needs when they needed you? Were you there? You
Right.
know, and from there, I don't. There's some kids that do abandon their parents. I'm not saying it's right.
Regardless of,
You
yeah.
can understand if
Exactly.
your parents have been abusive towards you, or probably even abandoned you when you were a child,
Yeah.
then you shouldn't expect your child to be there for you just because the
Right.
Bible said or the Quran said.
Yeah.
And we're not all religious.
No.
So we just have to try and figure from different perspective. Like sometimes it might be just because I always say if you teach your children how to treat you.
Right. Exactly.
I
Hmm.
believe that that's the only way. If you treat your children nice, they will treat you nice back. It's just as simple as that. But you can't go through life and then do whatever you want and then expect when you're older for your kids to be all around you and stuff. But you wasn't around them when they were younger as well.
True. That's very true. And I think the reason why I feel the way I feel is I think it's just the human in me that just thinks, I wouldn't want to see this elderly person.
Okay, Talia, can I just butt in a little bit
Go
just
ahead.
before you go on? I think that maybe you could be, and I use this statement a lot, maybe you're speaking from a position of privilege. Let's say where you're in a situation where you're not privileged, where you even struggle to find butter and bread. So, and then their expectation is on you as well. We're talking from the perspective of people who can afford these things,
Right.
and who can provide these things, and who can afford to be there for them. Where you cannot do it, where you cannot afford it, where all you can literally afford is for your children. There are people that go through these things that have to provide. They're seen as bad children because they don't provide for their parents. They're seen as bad people because they don't provide for their in-laws. Yeah, they're called names because they're not providing. They can't even provide for their own children.
Right.
Do you not feel like that pressure of
Yes.
I brought you into this world, I have to provide, you have to provide for me, or I brought you into this world, as a result you owe me so much, even if you struggled as a parent?
I just want to say there is no way that as a mother, for me, that's why I keep saying for me, as a mother, there is no way that I will see that my children can't afford something and I still expect them to do that thing. There is no way that I know that my kids can't do something and I'm still expecting whatever it is that they cannot do. I think as a good
reasonably
parent, you should know exactly, you should know the limits of your kids. So
right.
May I make a point though?
Yeah.
I think, again, I don't think the point is about being able to assist financially.
Yeah.
I think the point is about being there in whatever way the person that you're assuming responsibility for needs it.
Exactly.
Right? So classic example is this, right? You could have an elderly parent in the village, for example, or in a different city from where you are. And every month you send X amount of money to them, but you haven't seen them in years.
Exactly.
That's not being responsible for them. Okay, maybe what they actually want is to see your face, not for you to be sending money to them. So that point needs to be made in the sense that, when we talk about responsibility, we need to understand what that means to the person you're assuming responsibility for, and then that's what determines whether you're in a position to fulfill that position of responsibility.
Well, to kind of go back, going on the definition that I gave on the word responsibility, it means having a duty to deal with something or having control over something. So whether it's financial, whether it's you having responsibility to go over to your parents to make sure certain things are done and certain things are in order, that's all part of the responsibility. And I want to kind of shift this a little bit from what it is right now, from what we're discussing right now, because what I kind of take from what Talia has said is the fact that she would still be reasonable within her expectations, right? So if her children couldn't afford something, she wouldn't request it to begin with. So I think that's
from my kids. I think it's not. So for me, it's not really an expectation. I think, like Sakina said, you treat your kids nice, they will treat you nice. So I wouldn't be expecting. I wouldn't be saying, "Oh, I need a nice Chanel bag today." No.
No,
So,
but if you say they owe you that much, is it not an expectation?
To look after me when I can't look after myself.
Yeah,
Doesn't necessarily have to be financial as we have.
No, I'm not talking about financial. I'm just saying is that if you say they owe you that much, is there not an expectation that you have that if you're oh my God, if you're if you're incapacitated and you can't look after yourself, then it's their duty to deal with you or deal with your estate or deal with your whatever it is, or your lack of or finances or whatever.
Can I just quick sidebar just on something Talia said. Treating your kids right doesn't guarantee that they will treat you right. It's not a given.
I mean, no, it doesn't. But I think at some point, if that child does have any human feelings, and if I'm pooing on myself in bed and then there's no one to help me out, if that child does have any human sympathy, they will remember all the things that I've done for them and be like, you know what, my mom actually did this for me, and I mean, no, what?
It's not a given.
It is, CJ. You cannot say that you have strived hard for your children and then you're in the position where you can't look after yourself and you're not expecting them to look after you. I don't
know. I'm not
being created, but that would be almost like a inhumane thing to think, to say that you can't look after yourself and your kid. I don't know, Sha. That's just my own view.
Yeah, I mean, you assume that the person in question has the same level of quote unquote humanity in them. Hence
the reason why I said at least if my kids have any sense of human feelings in them.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, though, I agree with Talia in the sense that when you raise people, they're likely to have similar traits to you.
Absolutely.
Especially when you live with them or when you're raising them to have it's not always a given that they will have those traits, but the probability that they will have some of the traits that you have and not desert you when you're in your own, especially not if they can afford to. If they can't, then I don't really see anything that's wrong with it. But I don't think a child that's raised to be as humane as you are would desert you when you're old and you're not.
Sorry, they say it takes a community to raise a child, and you don't know what else the child is picking up out there against what you're putting into the child at home. So all I'm saying is, while you would expect, the reasonable expectation is that a child you've brought up a certain way will behave a certain way in the future. That's not a guarantee. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Maybe more likely than not, but yeah, let's I just want to shift from this before I kind of end the segment.
Can I just say something quickly? Sorry. So let's say you have a son and is married, with his own family, and God forbid something happens to you that you might need extra care at home. Maybe you need someone to
go on.
So your son has its own family. Something's happened to you. Now his wife just found out that she needs care as well. Does he abandon his family now because this is his own family? You're not his family anymore. Remember, once you find a wife,
of course,
you might find a wife. How does the Bible say it?
Yeah, you
now
leave
he has his own family. You're not his responsibility anymore.
Absolutely no. So obviously, I wouldn't expect him to abandon his wife and come and look after me. Of course, but while let's say he's looking after his wife 5 days a week, he can still pop in one afternoon to come and help me. That's not a bad thing. I'm just saying.
You want to set up a rota?
I'm just saying. No, the thing is, I think that it will be unreasonable to think
I think it's still within what you said of reasonable expectation. You're not going to expect him to abandon his wife.
To abandon his wife.
Absolutely not. It's still within the reasonable.
I expect him to still check up on me. Just the fact that you're looking after your wife doesn't mean you can't check up on me. Of course, I wouldn't say abandon your wife and your family. No, that would be unfair.
That would be cruel. Yeah. Okay, so to kind of shift this, do you feel like your spouse is responsible for your happiness, for example?
So yes.
What?
Is he Italian? You said yes. What about you, Jason?
No, you know what?
No, yeah, no, but nobody.
Responsible for your happiness. No, of course.
Yes, nobody should be responsible for your happiness. I mean, somebody can make an enabling environment where your happiness can thrive, but nobody should be responsible for your happiness now.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with that. Nobody's responsible for anybody's happiness.
At the spouse,
my spouse can definitely contribute to my happiness.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not, the happiness has to come from within, otherwise you're not happy. You're just living.
Someone else has control over your happiness.
Exactly. Happiness is free, isn't it?
I think we all agree on that. But is there a reason why you asked this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when people kind of leave marriages or leave their relationships, part of the reason is, oh, he doesn't make me happy. Well, maybe, you know, I don't know how I feel about it. I understand it. If somebody's not making you happy, if they're making your environment kind of hostile or kind of making you uncomfortable and stuff like that, then absolutely you should leave that environment that creates that kind of an environment. However, they're not responsible for you. You cannot stay there and say you're not happy because somebody is making you uncomfortable or creating an hostile, living environment. So that kind of rounds up everything that I wanted us to touch on this topic. We kind of agree in some areas, but to me, to kind of pull this whole thing together, and I just wanted to state, I don't expect anything. I don't think my children owe me anything whatsoever. They were born by choice, and I don't want, as Sakina said, if they choose to take care, if they choose to contribute to my life in any way, shape or form, then gladly. I'm not going to feel any type of way by a child that chooses to focus on their own family or on their own happiness or on their own growth, rather than come on check on me regularly or have any form of entitlement or any kind of ownership over them. So before we round up, I just want to
ask you this question. Sorry. So would you not feel sad if you're in your old age and your kids have just decided that, mom, they don't check up on you, let's say, at all?
That's not responsibility, though.
That's not responsibility.
They don't have to. That's not responsibility. That's not responsibility. They can check up on me, and I would love for me to continue to see them, but it's not a responsibility. Responsibility will be them having to deal with something regarding that is their job to do something for me. So they would to see me.
Check up on you is for you, though. It's
not for me.
It's for who?
If the doctor says for you to get better, be in a good mind space, for example, in your elderly years, and if the doctor said for you to feel better and be in a good mind space, right? And the doctor said, right, it'd be nice if your kids or people that are close to you are around you, for your health, then that's a responsibility.
Sure. Well, that's if the doctor says that, and still I would not have that expectation that for me it's more so the and this is not biblical or anything religious whatsoever. It's more so for me that once they kind of grown or kind of married or kind of shift away from me, I see them as an entity, or I see them as a separate entity from me. I don't see myself as, at that point, even I don't owe them anything. Anything I do for them from that point is by choice. I don't owe them nothing beyond, when I've raised them to adulthood, I've set them up until like they've gone uni, they've started it. I don't owe them anything. Anything that I do from that point is by choice, and anything they do for me at that point is by choice. So that's why I liked when Sakina said up to a certain age, because that's what I feel like I feel like it's a sensible thing to do. Obviously, I'm not going to say, oh, my 6-year-old right now, I don't owe you nothing. Well, I actually do.
I like how you did a quick pivot on there.
I mean, I would love to, but I mean, it would be kind of inhumane. So thank you guys so much for your contributions on this show. Thank you, Sakina. We loved having you. Thank you, Jason, again. You know, you're a blast as always. Thank you, Talia. Thanks, guys, for watching at home. We hope you've enjoyed this segment. If you have, make sure you subscribe and make sure you give it a huge thumbs up. And we'll see you on our next video. Bye.
Bye.